Tony, you're writing about an integrated life. What do you mean by that?
I wanted to differentiate myself from the traditional. There are a lot of coaches out there which help people, Gary, achieve work life balance, which is important in terms of helping people avoid the burnout situation. But I wanted to go a little deeper and help people understand that another element of an empowered career is an integrated life. So I draw on Richard Branson's analogy. He shares a beautiful quote that says, I don't see work as work and play as play. It's all living. And a truly powerful career is really an expression of your life and who you are. And if I look at Dave, for example, our landscaper friend from our previous chapter, his work wasn't really work, it was play. I would remember that I'd be standing in my backyard on certain days, and Dave would arrive and he'd be whistling. Not sure, Gary, if you're familiar with the story of the Seven Dwarfs, but there's a song in there called Whistle While You Work.
Absolutely.
Okay. And an integrated life is demonstrated by the fact that you could whistle while you work because you truly love what you do. That's far more profound than this concept of work life balance. Warren Buffett, he's one of the world's richest men, made a statement that said, I tap dance to work because he did something he truly loved. And that's Dave's story. And it also, if you look at it, I began to look at my career at the back end of it as this concept of an integrated life. Because a lot of people say to me, well, work is work, and then my life is over here. It's a separate compartment. And I'm saying, no, they're an integrated, they interlock. And they go to me, well, what do you mean by that? I say, well, what are some of the valuable skills do you learn at work? I'm developing people soft skills. Okay. And how does that integrate with your life? Well, I've got teenage children, and I say to them, some of the skills that you learn in the workplace and the company has paid for you on certain trainings, do you apply that with teenage children to bring them back and behave properly? Oh, yes, I do. Yes. So can you see that there's an integration with those two? What else? Well, in my employment, I manage a budget so that the money, that there's as much money going out as there is coming in. And do you apply some of those principles to your family life so that you don't overspend? Yes, I do. So once they start seeing those elements, how their work is enriching their life, and conversely, how their life is enriching their work, it becomes this cohesion, consistent sort of life apprenticeship, not just this separate job and life dynamic. In my case, Gary, if I share a little bit of my story, I've written a number of books, and I genuinely believe I wouldn't have been able to write those books if it wasn't the writing skills that I acquired when I was in corporate, because I was required to take a lot of data, information from meetings I held with people, and then decipher the messages from that data to create information, and then distill it again to write executive reports. So I was being required to distill the messages from a lot of information to key points for executives to read because they wanted things distilled down to one page.
Hmm.
So I could see the benefit. I also learnt computer skills from my corporate days. So I didn't see job and life as separate. I saw them as an integrated whole. And that sort of made that journey more satisfying and more powerful.
What do you do, Tony, if you get a person in the latter part of his or her career who suddenly gets this aha scenario through reading your book, but they think, gosh, I've invested or wasted 20 or 30 years of my life to get to where I am now, just to learn that I should have integrated my work with my life.
Well, I would say that nothing's wasted. Uh, you've gone through that journey. You may not have had that realization, but it still occurred anyway. So they've been the beneficiary of their work in terms of their life dynamic. If you look at your own background, Have you worked for companies over the course of your career, Gary?
Oh, in the in the early days, but I've been in my own business now for 40 years, so
Okay, but was there stuff that you took from your early days that you still apply?
absolutely.
Okay. Could you name one for our audience?
Well, I think just what you said, passion, loving what I do and never seeing it as work, but seeing it as part of my life. Because in the area of sales and negotiation, that was always my passion. So to me, there's no difference between my life and business.
Perfect. Yes, you've never created a barrier between the two. You've integrated them, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's far more deeper, isn't it, than this concept of work-life balance?
Absolutely. And that's why the question I asked was, what do you do with somebody who's now maybe 50 or 60 and they've just been retrenched and suddenly they meet you and they get this wow experience, which is wow. If only I'd met you 30, 40, 50 years earlier, Tony.
Well, I've had that where people said to me, "Where were you 10, 12 years ago?" Well, I'm sorry, but um, we didn't know each other, but you can still look back and have an appreciation of the skills you acquired for your employment. So you don't hold on to that resentment. So you can go back and shift the perspective on it and see how your working days have enriched your life and not just given you an income. Um, I was speaking to a gentleman who used to be in the building industry, Gary, and he would he got to 50 years of age and his body couldn't deal with the heavy lifting and what have you. So he got out of the building game and became a TAFE teacher where he was teaching young apprentices carpentry skills and potentially, if they wanted to, go into their own building business. And I asked him, his gentleman's name was Alex, and I share his story in the book. What do you most enjoy about your TAFE teaching? He said, well, it's interesting, Tony, you would ask me that. It's actually not what most people think it is. It's not actually teaching them carpentry skills or building business skills. It's actually counseling them because a lot of young men in their early 20s, mid 20s go off the rails and they might, you know, gamble, drink, go hoon driving and all that sort of stuff rather than starting to build the foundations for a strong life platform.
Hmm.
And that's the most satisfying thing for me to see these men take a future path. And I say, well, okay, that's really good. How does that integrate with your life? And he goes, well, I've got two young sons. And from time to time, I will come home and share stories about this person and that person and the path they took. And that stories then land with their sons in terms of what they're going to do with their life. So hopefully that, regardless of where you are, there's a correlation between your work and your life.
Beautifully placed and said. So, just as a final comment on chapter three, what would you ask your reader to maybe do right now?
Rise above the concept of work life balance, but ask yourself the question, how does my work enrich my life?
Fantastic.